Hey folks, welcome back for another build video. This time around, we're focused on the Bluescreen and the Heartbreaker gear set. So you've got the Bluescreen, you've read the talent description that is about 1.5 miles long, and you're trying to figure out what the heck to do with it. May I humbly submit the Bluescreen and Heartbreaker combination. So while I'm not going to read the Disruptor Rounds talent verbatim, you can do that for yourself at any time. The basic premise here is you want to shoot your enemies to build stacks, at which point you can use your non-shield skills to remove those stacks and apply various status effects based on how many stacks you've built, up to a max of 50. And as we skim through this talent description, one thing that becomes obvious is the repetition of Pulse, Disrupt, and Disorient. And those status effects are applied in varying quantities based on the number of stacks, as we said before. And anyone who has used a Heartbreaker build already knows that having pulsed enemies is a great benefit, given the Heartbreaker's Heartstopper talent, which increases your bonus armor and damage to pulsed enemies. So with that preamble out of the way, let's get into this one. We'll start with the specialization. We've gone with Gunner, primarily for the Coupler, Incessant, and Supply Line talents. Anytime you have an LMG, Gunner is a great specialization to go with. The Coupler talent gives you your third reload 50% faster. Incessant obviously gets you armor on kill, and Supply Line regenerates 10% of your total ammo, which is a greater number of bullets with the LMG than with any other weapon. And on top of that, the Barrage talent increases your rate of fire by 5% on kill. So it all just builds together. I don't need to state the obvious. Moving into our primary weapon, we have the aforementioned Bluescreen with the Disruptor Rounds talent. We already went into it a bit, but obviously shooting your enemy increases your stacks, at which point using a non-shield skill or killing a marked enemy will trigger various status effects, which all complement themselves very nicely for this build. For our secondary weapon, we have the Kingbreaker, which sports the Perfect Flatline talent. Anytime you're dealing with pulsed enemies, Flatline is a great weapon talent to go with, and Perfect Flatline is even better. Given the relatively low rate of fire, this honestly feels a bit more like another LMG, just with a different ammo pool. So if you need to reload your Bluescreen, or God forbid run out of light machine gun ammo, you can always switch to the Kingbreaker and keep on chugging away. For the sidearm, we've gone with the backup boomstick just for something a little bit different. If you get cornered by an enemy, you can pull this thing out and absolutely blow them away. And then down here, we've got the Pummel talent, which is a great one to go with any shotgun, especially the double-barreled variant. For our mask, we have Vile. As we mentioned with the Bluescreen, you're going to be applying Pulse, Disrupt, and Disorient on enemies a lot of the time. And since both Disrupt and Disorient are status effects, you'll be applying Toxic Delivery every time you apply either of those status effects on an enemy. So I'll go back up to the Bluescreen talent description here just for a second to focus in on that 50 stack bonus, where you will pulse, disrupt, and disorient marked targets and all hostiles within 10 meters of marked targets for 5 seconds. And this effect will trigger immediately if any marked target is killed. So the idea behind this build is a bit more of crowd control and group support. What you want to do is go through and mark as many hostiles as possible, try and get those stacks up to 50, and then trigger a kill, at which point you will pulse, disrupt, disorient, and apply toxic delivery to all of your enemies within range. It's certainly not the only way to use this build, but it feels fantastic when you pull it off. For our backpack, we have our first piece of Heartbreaker with armor regen and skill haste in the mod slot. The skill haste there is specifically to get our skills back as fast as possible. It may seem like a bit of an odd addition to an LMG build, but as you'll see in the video, having your skills available to you to proc status effects and apply pulse really helps this build work. So that's why we have it here. And while you can also roll it in the attribute slot if you so choose, I always like to have a little bit of armor regen on support builds like this where you're hiding in cover, as it's a great passive way to get your armor back without having to expend an armor kit. Likewise here for the chest piece, we have armor regen and skill haste in that attribute and mod slot. And then we also get our 2-piece bonus of assault rifle damage and LMG damage. Both of those bonuses did obviously funnel into our primary and secondary weapon choices. On top of that, by getting both the backpack and chest piece from Heartbreakers, we get the Cold talent and the Max BPM talent. Cold increases total bonus armor gained from 1% to 2%, which feels really great when you're taking fire, getting that extra percent every shot. makes it a much more viable talent. And then on top of that, max BPM increases those stacks from 50 to 100, increasing the maximum amount of damage you can give and bonus armor that you can receive. And then for our gloves, this is an LMG build, so Contractor's Gloves makes perfect sense. You get plus 10% LMG damage bonus from the Petrov's defense group, and on top of that you get the plus 8% damage to armor, and then we've gone with weapon handling in that second attribute slot there. For our holster, we have our third piece of Heartbreakers. It gives us our plus 15% weapon handling bonus. And then on top of that down there, we have armor and skill haste in our attribute slot. Again, just giving us our skills back that extra little bit faster. And the same thing here with the Kneepads. Skill haste rolled in the attribute slot. And then we do get our 4-piece bonus of Heartstopper, where now headshots apply pulse for 5 seconds. Weapon hits on pulsed enemies add stacks of plus 1% bonus armor and plus 1% damage to pulsed enemies, up to 50% for each one. For our skills, we've gone with the Blinder Firefly and the Scanner Pulse. As you'll see in the video, the basic strategy here is to apply both of your skills before an encounter if it's going to be a quick one, like a resource convoy. So you'll pulse your enemies and then blind them. This allows you to do more damage because they are pulsed, and obviously give you more time to do the damage because they are blind. And again, if this is a quick encounter, you normally have time to take down at least the first wave before your status effects have worn off, at which point, after roughly 12 seconds, you're going to get your Scanner Pulse back, allowing you to pulse again if you need to repulse your enemies and keep that damage bonus going. And a quick note here, if you're doing a longer encounter, something like a control point or a longer mission, you definitely want to use these skills more tactically. As we go back up to the Bluescreen's Disruptor Rounds talent, you can see down there, 50 stacks is what you want to get to, because you obviously have diminishing returns prior to that. And anytime you deploy a skill, it's going to remove all of your stacks. So on a longer encounter, you want to use this once you have 50 stacks to do the maximum amount of chaos possible. Like we said before, if you get this one right, you're going to be able to trigger Pulse, Disrupt, Disorient, and Toxic Delivery on a whole host of enemies, because at this point you've marked a number of enemies, and any of those hostiles within 10 meters of marked targets are going to absolutely be obliterated by all of these status effects, allowing you to come in and clean them up with the Bluescreen, which, thanks to the Heartbreaker gear set, is getting additional damage to all of those enemies that you've just pulsed. So that's this build. Let me know what you think of it. If you try it out, let me know if there are any variations you apply to it. Obviously, skill haste is a bit of a preferential pick here. You could certainly go a different route. If you do, let me know what you go with. Love to hear from you guys in the comments. As always, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.